different toolkits. What kind of resistances or concerns do you think this reform agenda to move us away from mass incarceration without blowing up the crime rate through a lot of risk screening, sort of better technology, better science and technology, risk screening and electronic monitoring, maybe a more targeted use of rehabilitation? He says, now compared to the 70s, we really know a lot about how to identify the people that will benefit from drug treatment or from anger management classes. So we're going to do a much better job rehabilitating people, and we're going to incapacitate people, but instead of sending them to prison out in Pelican Bay, we're going to send them to Dublin to chill out for 36 hours in the Allegheny County Jail, or we're going to put them on the highways or in your parks in a jumpsuit picking up litter, not literature, hopefully, could be literature as well. What about that? Other than maybe finding a more telegenic spokesperson for less crime, less prisons, and Mark is actually a very funny speaker, so he's very effective spokesperson for this, actually. What kind of resistances would you anticipate as sort of a student of punishment and society, looking at how the public is likely to digest and respond to this kind of punish less, punish smarter approach? Just going to go over big? Don't we like technology? We're kind of a gee whiz culture that we could get excited about technology helping us solve the crime problem, or?
Well, that's correct, but not when it comes to privacy, individual privacy. And we're seeing this a lot with concerns with Google and Facebook in terms of where their information going, how and when does Google know where we are? I mean, those sorts of questions are in the public consciousness. So I think Lyman will pitch to us having ankle bracelets that tell the government, which Americans already don't really trust very much.
Of course, the people we're putting the bracelets on, though, are criminals, right? So that'll help a little bit. I mean, I think you're right to notice that sort of one of our Durkheimian values that's very powerful right now is this concern about privacy. And I think you're exactly right that some of the policies that maybe would move us in this direction, for instance, more use of CCTV cameras just in the general streets, which the UK is very big on, and we haven't been quite as strong on. Things like neighborhood watch, having more George Zimmermans on your block, etc. Just makes you feel a lot better right there. The point is, a lot of that gets into privacy issues, and a lot of us don't like the idea of George Zimmerman sort of poking around in our lives and asking us questions. And so there could be some resistance. One answer is to sort of tie it to the Durkheimian punishment side and say, all right, we're going to strip people of their privacy, but only people who have violated the law. I notice that we do that precisely because privacy is now becoming a more and more sacred social value, although I don't quite understand why, since we're going on Facebook and violating our own privacy all the time. But there's a contradiction there for sure. But nonetheless, it's becoming a very sacred social value. Well, what would Durkheim tell us? That something that's a sacred social value is on the one hand something we want to protect, and we may even want to punish people who violate it, but at the same time, it therefore makes a good punishment. If we want to punish somebody who deserves punishment, now instead of hurting their body, now instead of taking away their freedom, which was sort of the Durkheim's generation solution, maybe now what we do is take away their privacy. And I think actually one of the areas of potential future innovation could be privacy-based punishments, where the punishment is the loss of privacy rather than going along with prison or some of these other punishments. What other kind of concerns, resistances, responses do you think the public might have to a Kleiman-type plan, this kind of punish less, punish smarter approach, which you hear from a lot of leaders, and it does seem like kind of the thinking, the kind of moderate middle approach to this that might have a chance of convincing the public compared to the wild-eyed, let them all out types. What are the problems? Assume for a moment that that Kleiman's right, that having these ankle bracelets on, etc., can really deter a lot of people. 80 or 90% of the people with these on are going to comply because it's like seeing the CHP in your rearview mirror. You're really going to feel the pressure right there. If people believe that, is that enough? Do you think if we can convince people, look, this really does work, it's going to reduce future criminal behavior by these folks, and it's a lot cheaper, even that ankle bracelet at $3,500 a year is going to be a lot cheaper than prison cell at $40,000. Is that going to close the deal to a lot of Californians? What other kind of concerns do you think they may have? I know you put all your best ideas into your papers. I'm just looking for a few scraps of ideas. Yeah?
I think most for life
so, how much incapacitation, how much deterrence is enough, right? So, one concern we might have is that the public might well be convinced that 80% of the people are going to be deterred by this. But as long as that 20% can include the next Charles Manson or the next, kidnapper of J.C. Dugard, then I'm not sure I want them out there, right? Because just because they've got an ankle bracelet on, and just because we can later determine that they were there when the kidnapping took place, doesn't mean that little girl isn't going to be dead or raped before they get to that person. Doesn't mean that the person's not going to be able to successfully escape, as we've seen. Incompetent parole in the Dugard case again is a sort of a warning lesson to a lot of people that you really can't trust law enforcement to do a good enough job. So I think there is a sort of fear factor, what I call total incapacitation, the idea that prison is a kind of no-risk solution. Once somebody's locked up, they can't hurt you until they get out. They might hurt a guard, they might hurt another prisoner, but they can't hurt you. That has a lot of appeal. It's not clear that this kind of smart punishment, less punishment approach can answer that level of fear, right? It's kind of like saying to the person, who wants you to reduce the risk of some kind of pollution causing a disease in them, handing them a mask and saying, well, this will knock out 80 or 90% of the bad stuff. Well, what about that other 10%? What about that other 18%? I don't trust that. So there's that concern. What other kinds of concerns, besides mistrust that this will actually protect people, that kind of fear side, what other kind of, let's bring Durkheim back into the picture. What other kind of concerns would Durkheim remind us might surface in a public debate about this kind of reform of prison to smart bracelets? It doesn't look like punishment, right? I mean, if you're walking around with something like this, it's tied to your ankle instead of in your pocket, it's just another expensive piece of electronics. That's punishment. Measuring what you're supposed to be doing anyway. I mean, a lot of people walk around with GPSs just to measure making sure they're getting enough exercise. My brother-in-law's one of these nuts that will show you day to day, like every bike ride he's taken, every place that he went to get exercise, how many calories he's burned, etc. So is this really punishment enough? And especially because in art, remember for Durkheim's time, the question was whether people would accept punishment that wasn't physical. Will people think that being locked up in a jail or prison, especially if it's supposed to be rehabilitative, is really punishment if they're associating punishment with floggings and mutilations and death? In our time, we've kind of accepted that punishment means incarceration. And for many of us, the jail or the prison symbolizes punishment. And it's really unclear whether we can accept a non-incarceral punishment as punitive enough. This is also true of fines, by the way. One of the most important ways we really believe deterrence is important, and I think it is, especially in an era where all of us are going to be selling some kind of app on the internet or whatever for our living. It's important to deter people from fraud and things of this nature. Fines are a very effective way to do that. I mean, if you're going to lose your money, and that goes a long way toward making you think twice about something you're doing to get money, especially. Now, historically, people have been concerned that fines would be unfair in terms of wealth versus 1%ers versus 99%ers. But the truth is, you can set fines to reflect where you are, from 1% down to the very bottom of the 99th percentile. We can even make it a non-monetary fine, a work requirement of some sort. The problem is, do people see that as punishment, right? A fine could come from anywhere, right? Somebody could give me the money to pay for it. It's not clear that it's coming from me. And so it raises all kinds of concerns about whether it's punitive enough. And to put another concern out there that has been certainly an animating part of mass incarceration, but it's not clear is addressed by this, what about the victims? Will victims feel that a penal system that ends up taking people who have offended against them, perhaps not in very extreme ways, but by taking their property, burglarizing their property, etc., are being released to the community on some kind of electronic monitoring basis? Will they view that as respecting their dignity? And that's one thing I want you to think about as we talk next class about restorative justice. A lot of people think that restorative justice might not be able to address some of these fear concerns, but they could address some of what you might think of as the kind of residual retributive concerns of victims and of communities that feel that both prison but also these new intermediate sanctions don't really address our desire for justice or a sense of dignity to the victim in the way that we might want a justice system to do. Arguably, restorative justice can bring that, and then the question is whether if you bring restorative justice together with the smart anklet, the house arrest, etc., can you put together a system that effectively reduces crime while also making victims feel that their dignity is respected? And that is the kind of thing that might move us long-term away from mass incarceration. So we'll take up that question on Thursday.